Hi, everybody. I'm Debbie Bond. I've been sort of in the background helping to orchestrate a lot of these Take 30s. I'm joining up front today just to help to ask some of the questions and to kick it off. We're on our Take 30 with a BI expert. And today we're joined with partners from Tableau to talk about the most compelling features in the Tableau 2020.2 release. So Ryan is going to take us through this. The agenda is we're going to give you a little bit of background about Ironside, introduce everyone, and talk a little bit about relationships, set control, metrics. And as always, questions and answers are key to the success of these Take 30s. So please enter the Q&As into your screens, and we will take them as they come. Thanks. So here are some of the sessions that are coming up in our block 2 for Take 30. Hope that you can join us, that you should have them registered because we register as a block. Looking forward to seeing you in the upcoming weeks. Please advance. And we have introduced a new aspect. It's Take 30 with a BI expert. So if this timing on Thursdays at 10 a.m. isn't working for you, or if you have a question that you just want to take one-on-one, there is a link on the website that you can click and you can schedule a time frame, or I will be sending out in the chat to everyone that link, and you can go ahead and schedule some time. We would love to talk to you and have some one-on-one time. We help our clients make decisions about their data. We provide a wide range of capabilities. We've been doing it for 20 years. At the heart of that is our business intelligence and enterprise business BI expertise, and we're looking forward to sharing more of that today. So now I'm going to introduce you to our panelists, and Phil, thank you for joining us. Ryan, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Bowen. I've worked at Ironside for a few years as a consultant, primarily working in the BI and advisory space. And for a while now, I've been helping my clients with their Tableau server and Tableau environment. And I'm very excited to walk you through what's new with Tableau 2020.2 today.
Terrific. And I'm Phil D'Amico. I am a lead solution engineer with Tableau. I focus specifically on partners like Ironside. I've been with Tableau for about 3 years, and I'm looking forward to helping Ryan today.
All right, so let's get to it. Why everybody's here, what's new with 2020.2, and let's start with definitely the biggest change that's coming, that's going to alter how people look at analytics within Tableau. And so Tableau has enhanced their data model with new capabilities with what they're calling relationships. Combining and analyzing data across multiple tables and at different levels of detail has become much easier and much more powerful. Data sources now have a logical layer, not just a physical layer, where tables are linked by these relationships. Whereas in the past, you would specify joins and unions between tables to create single table data sources. Now, creating these relationships between tables is perfect for stored data and common data warehouse schemas like Star and Snowflake. Tableau can now recognize and preserve normalized data and enables ad hoc data sources to be created within each visualization. This allows Tableau to bring in the right level of detail into your analysis. So let's try to simplify this idea. So pre-2020.2, you would have to combine your data first, as I said, through joins, and then analyze the pre-joined single table data source in your sheets. But now you analyze analyze first which tables and data you would like to bring into the data source canvas that relate to one another, and then the joins are created naturally in the worksheets by Tableau when you bring in data from multiple tables. I'll walk you through an example of how this works through the lens of a level of detail problem. Now, pre-2020.2, if you want to include market data with transaction data, we would join the two tables on the market description field, which creates a new table that now includes your new population field, which you can see at the bottom. If we were asked the question of how many people live in Boston, you can see what is about to happen. We would drag the market description field in and the population into a worksheet, and it would sum to 4.7 million, which wouldn't be right. So how do we remedy this? We would have to set default aggregation for population to average. And it's all set, but it showcases the previous inflexibility of Tableau that forces you to join tables before analysis and compromise the level of detail. Now, in 2020.2, instead of having to join the transaction table with the market table to create a single table in the data source canvas that would include the new field population, we would just drag both tables into the canvas where they will exist separately in their normalized state, but we'll have a relationship between them based on the common field market description. You can see the relationship has been formed between them by this gray line here. Now, when we get to the worksheet, we ask the same question of how many people live in Boston. We can drag the market description from the transaction table and the population from the market table, and it would join the tables in the specific view to get the single row of Boston and the sum of population. This time, you can see that it's correct because population was able to aggregate to its native level of detail, and it only had a single Boston row with its population in the market table. So to reiterate, relationships use joins in the visualizations. Tableau automatically selects join types based on the fields being used in the visualization. During analysis, Tableau adjusts join types intelligently. It isn't only inner joins, as you see here in my slide, and it preserves the native level of detail in your data. So this example shows you how the new data model handles the complexities of level of detail without complex calculations needed on your end. So the next slide will show the performance impact of this new data model. So I'll quickly touch on how relationships impact filters. If you need a market filter for your dashboard, which table would you rather query? In pre-2020.2, bringing the market data into Tableau, joining it with the transaction table, and then filtering on market description would hit the original query that was generated in the data source canvas, which we know is made up of 10 million rows. Not exactly ideal. Now in 2020.2, since Tableau only generates queries for the data relevant to the current view, you can create the market filter that would now hit your much smaller query. I think the answer becomes obvious. So what's the value of relationships? These 6 bullet points highlight the biggest value of relationships. And first, there's less upfront data prep. Users no longer have to combine tables by pre-aggregating their data to single level of detail in custom SQL or database views. Now, when analyzing multiple tables, Tableau can automatically combine the relevant tables at the right level of detail at analysis time. Some of Tableau's customers have described this as ETL on the fly. There's more analysis scenarios per data source. Previously, with pre-aggregated data, detail would be lost, limiting the variety of purposes a data source can serve. Now, a data source can preserve all the detail for all of its source tables. This enables users to answer unanticipated questions, serving more use cases with a single data source. More flexible data sources also means fewer data sources and less maintenance on your end. There's greater trust in results. Combining tables of data can be tricky and error-prone. With joins, users can unintentionally filter their data, while relationships always preserve all measures. Now, using relationships, your most important measures can never go missing. Another challenge with manual data prep is that users must pay close attention to the order of joins and aggregations. With relationships, Tableau handles this automatically. They are level of detail aware. Because relationships preserve the source tables in their original structure, measures automatically aggregate to the native level of detail. There's now analysis time handling of unmatched values. Since unmatched values are handled individually per viz, a single data source can simultaneously support all join types: inner, left, right, full, outer. Lastly, context-aware queries. Tableau only pulls data from the tables that are relevant for the viz. I keep reiterating this, but it's very important. If you're only analyzing a single table, no joins happen at all. Users can add more tables to the data source with no impact on query time. So these are 3 key words to remember about relationships. Relationships are a flexible way to combine data from multiple tables for analysis. Users define the matching fields between tables, and Tableau generates automatic joins based on the current state of your analysis. Relationships postpone joins to the time and context of analysis. This preserves the native level of detail in your data and only queries tables that are needed based on fields in a viz. When you combine tables using relationships, it's like creating a custom, flexible data source for every viz, all in a single data source.
You're talking about relationships, but what if a workbook was created in a prior version or a version prior than 2020.2?
Actually, Ryan, I can take that.
Okay.
Yeah. The good thing about this is that when you, if you read in with 2020.2, if you read in a previous workbook, it will work fine. In other words, you can continue to use Tableau exactly the way you've used it, because we will pull that single flat table in as one, what we call, or Ryan referred to as logical table, and it will say on the data pane, it will say migrated data. So you will be able to use pre-2020.2 workbooks in 2020.2, and if you want to continue to model with Tableau exactly the way you always have, you can certainly do that. So there should be no issues if you want to sort of slowly learn about relationships and kind of dip your toe in it. That's good.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, so I did a lot of talking. Let's jump into the demo on relationships to get a better understanding, because that's where the understanding is going to come more easily. Okay, are we all looking at Tableau now?
We are.
Okay, great. So this is a sample data set that's in a flat file containing data on just storage data across 5 tables based on its product categories, its customers, its products, its transaction and transaction details. So let's start by pulling in transaction details table and then bringing in the product table. As you can see, there's this orange noodle that forms. That's what Tableau calls it, a noodle. That means that a relationship is about to be formed. So if I drop in the product table, this edit relationship box forms, in which you can see that Tableau automatically created this relationship based on a common field between the 2 tables, which in this case is product ID. You can manually choose how you want to relate the tables by selecting the fields, but product ID is the correct field that we would want to relate these tables, so I'm going to leave it. On the bottom, you can see performance options, and these help. You can tune these to help Tableau optimize queries during analysis, and these have to do with cardinality and referential integrity of the relationship that we created. For now, we'll leave these as default. Now let's bring in another table, transaction. This is going to be related to the transaction details table based on transaction ID fields. That looks good. Now what happens if you bring in a table that doesn't relate well to another? There's an error that forms. Tableau couldn't figure out which fields would map to each other to create a relationship, and so it asks you to select them manually. But as you can see in this case, they shouldn't be related, and therefore we should move this table to where it would have a better relationship, a correct relationship to another table, which would be on category ID with the product table. Lastly, let's bring in our customer table, which is related to the transaction table based on customer ID. Now I want you to take a look at the bottom of this data pane here, and you can see that these tables maintained their normalized state. There are no joins going on in this canvas. They are just, Tableau understands that they are related based on fields with one another. And so they all look exactly the same as they would in my flat file if I opened that up. So let's look in a sheet. So let's take a look at the left side in this data pane here, and you can see the differences with relationships. No longer are there dimensions and measures separated on the top and the bottom. Instead, it's broken out by table with dimensions and measures within those tables that belong to those tables. with the dimensions on top separated by this gray line. Tableau has this auto-generated field that counts the number of records in each table. So this would have a count of rows per category table. If I drag this one out, it'd be the count of rows for the customer table. Now, if you wanted to create a calculated field between a single table, such as if we wanted to do contribution margin of our products, this would just stay within the product table because it didn't require any other fields outside of this table. But if we wanted to create calculated fields between multiple tables, if we bring in the quantity sold under the transaction details table, and then multiplied by that by the unit price, now our calculated field would be not belonging to a single table because it relies on fields between multiple tables, and so therefore it would reside on the bottom of the data pane. So these are just a few things I wanted to highlight about changes to this data pane on the left. So let's try to answer a simple business question such as, who are my customers, what are they buying, and how much? We'll start in the customer table, drag in the customer name. What are they buying? We want to look under the products to bring in the product name. And then how much are they buying of those products? That's in the transaction details table under quantity sold. So now using fields between three tables, we're able to answer that question very easily. So as you can see, we were able to pull in fields from customer table, the transaction detail table that was related based on the fields between these two tables, and then as well as the product name from the product table. So it's pretty neat to see how relationships work in action. But I definitely recommend working around it, working with it, getting in Tableau, and answering your own business questions because it is very powerful.
Well, just a real quick question on relationships. Is it a feature in Tableau Prep or in Desktop?
Currently, it is not. It is not in Prep yet. It will be in the next maintenance release of Prep, where when you build those, when you build the hyperfiles, you will build what we refer to as multi-table extracts. So that's coming in Prep. Currently, it's only available in Desktop.
Okay, great.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
Do clients have the option of not using this feature?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, if you can continue to use Tableau Desktop the way you always have by joining everything into a single table. And if you look at the training that we offer at the end here, we will walk you through that. In the interest of time, we haven't gone into the details of logical tables versus physical tables. But if you look at it, you'll see that you can continue to use Tableau the way you always have if you want to.
And there is a question on just explaining how relationships differ from joins. I don't know if you want to answer that now or later.
Yeah, I can answer that in about 30 seconds, and then I'll let Ryan get on with the rest of it. What you're doing with the relationships is you're essentially defining a join. You're saying, what do these two tables have in common? But you are not upfront defining the type of join. So whether it's a left join, inner join, right join, outer join, that type of join will happen based on the context of the query. So if you have a sheet that requires an outer join, so let's say you want to show markets even if the market has no sales, then that typically would be done with an outer join. That will happen automatically with relationships, whereas with the prior versions of Tableau, you would have to initiate that outer join up front. So relationships they're like joins, but they're more flexible because you're saying, here's how these two relate, and then Tableau, based on the questions I ask and the metrics I build, you will at runtime figure out the right way to join them.
Great, thanks, Phil. Yeah, we can talk a lot, but sometimes it takes practice and really just understanding your data and working with it to really get a full appreciation for how relationships are going to impact you and your organization. Move on to the next functionality change in 2020.2 with set controls. Tableau has changed how users interact with sets. Now they can act like filters, allowing the user to change members of a set very easily and very quickly. Your vizzes are now much more dynamic, as these set inputs drive calculations power the visualization. End users now have a straightforward way to leverage the complex calculations that authors have already created to drive their own insights. And since the domain refreshes automatically, the freshest data is always reflected in your dashboard. So I'll walk through a quick example on the right before I get to the last piece of 2020.2 that we're going to tell you about. But so let's talk about this vision on the right side here. It describes average housing prices in various outcodes in London. We call these postal codes. London is built in concentric circles, and houses are more expensive as you get closer to the center of the city. The more expensive the outcode, the more orange the color. In the viz, it selects outcodes E4, E5, E6, which are located near the edges of London to belong in our set membership. This means that we're averaging their prices together and then comparing that average to the rest of the outcodes. This is why a lot of the outcodes suddenly look more red. They're higher in average price compared to the outer edges that we've selected in our set. And we could just keep adjusting our set members to see how different groupings compare. So this is just one example on how to use set controls.
Ryan, real quick before we move on to the third area, what are the differences between set control and set actions?
So the functionality is the same. However, the ability to view and select the entire domain is provided in one compact package. And it also allows the user to search through an entire domain, which means you can address larger domains.
And we have
and I'll just add to that, Debbie. It really, if you think about it, what we've done in 2020.1 and 2020.2 is we're with dynamic parameters and parameter actions and those things, is we're trying to consolidate all of those things that traditionally had to be created by creating multiple worksheets to drive those controls. So what we want to do is be able to put a set control and make it look just like a filter to give people a lot more flexibility. That's really what the goal is here overall with 2021 and 2020.2.
Thanks. Just stepping back 1 second, there was a question on relationships. I just want to make sure we close that out. Does a relationship change as the live data source data set changes?
In other words, if you're thinking about, let's say, a primary key or foreign key relationship, you mean? If that's the question, I think that might be the question, is if I change the way two tables relate in my source, will it automatically change in Tableau? The short answer is probably no, but we would have to look at the specifics of that, because when you define a relationships, it's stored with the Tableau workbook or with the Tableau data source. It's not going to be smart enough to sort of go back and figure out what's changed in the data source. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I would probably answer it the same way there, Phil. Data model is in Tableau, and it wouldn't go back and alter what you've done in your data source. So I would agree with that. All right, so lastly, let's cover the creation of metrics. Metrics are perfect for users that want to remain informed without having to review data in a dashboard-heavy setting within their online and server environment. Now, some of you may be familiar with data-driven alerts, and metrics are created in a similar way. You just navigate to your dashboard in your environment, click on the metrics button, select your KPI. In this case, we can look at leads per account and save it as a metric. It will appear on the web and mobile as you see here. Metrics are especially designed for Tableau mobile users because dashboards aren't always easy to navigate on the go, and some users may only want to look at a few numbers anyways. All right, so these are some different resources, and as it says at the top, these are linked in the chat. But definitely do not, of course, stop your learning at this Take 30. There's so much great content out there that Tableau's put out, that different users and blogs have put out. So definitely just keep searching around, keep understanding how Tableau 2020.2 is changing and going to be altering how you use analytics in your organization for the better. So if there's any more questions at this time, we would love to hear them and love to answer them.
So Ryan, we did get a question on metrics because we just quickly covered that. But can permissions for a metric be different than those of the view they were created from?
That's a really good question.
Yes. Metrics, yeah, because they're just independent objects, they're operated as views, they can therefore be permissioned separately within your environment, because that's how we want our environments permissioned, based on different views that are separated from one another.
Great, and we have another one diving deeper on metrics. And Phil, you should show yourself if you have the ability as we're answering this, because I think it's going to be for you. What controls?
I don't want them to make me look bad.
Yeah.
What controls how often a metric is refreshed?
Oh, that's a good question. So if a metric comes from an extract, then it will be only as live as the refresh schedule of the extract. However, if it is based on live data, then we update those metrics every 60 minutes. That is something you can control and you can update, but we can update that by default every 60 minutes. And one interesting thing about the metrics is if you drill into it, it will also show you a timeline of how that metric has changed with each refresh. So that's another thing that another reason why the KPIs are very interesting for people, is they can see.
Yeah, this is what Phil's talking about here.
Yeah.
So,
all right, great. It's 10:30. Debbie, do you want to take the end here?
With that, I will just say thank you and have a great day. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Phil.